Next up, we have a really incredible session of something that I am very much thinking about. I think a lot of the rest of you all are thinking about as well, the Metaverse. So really honored to introduce today Ms. Janine Yorio. Janine is the CEO and co-founder of Everyrealm, a Metaverse innovation and investment platform backed by Anderson Horowitz, Coinbase, Lightspeed, and celebrity investors including The Weeknd, Will Smith, and Paris Hilton. Janine, are they joining us as well? Janine was previously the CEO and co-founder of Compound, a fintech app focused on real estate investing that was backed by NEA and Founders Fund. Compound named one of Inc. magazine's 50 world-changing startups to watch, acquired by Republic in 2020. She previously worked as a partner in a private equity firm, North Star Capital, and in real estate development and investment at Standard Hotels. Janine is a graduate of Yale University. Janine, welcome.
Thank you. Is this on? Hey guys. Okay, great. So I'm the CEO of a company called Everyrealm, which is probably way outside of the sphere of things that you guys are thinking about, but we actually focus on metaverse real estate, which is something you probably have heard a bit about. Can we go to the next slide? So the reason everybody's so excited about metaverse is because all of the research firms are talking about how much money we're all going to make if we figure out how to tap the metaverse category. JP Morgan has already said that over $54 billion are being spent each year on virtual goods. That means like skins in Fortnite and virtual shoes and things that you can never touch or own in real life. That's a huge number. It's actually more than Amazon makes on their clothing line. So just to put that number into perspective. McKinsey is saying that there will be $4 to $5 trillion to be made in metaverse in the very near future. And if you look at video game companies that are already focused on the metaverse category, like the maker of Fortnite, they're doing $3 billion in annual revenue. So this is clearly something worth taking notice about, even if it's not necessarily something you do during your day job. Next slide. So there's a lot of cynicism around the metaverse. Last year, we got a ton of hype, lots of news articles. Facebook even changed their name to Meta, which just made everybody wonder if this is a sham. The fact is, the metaverse isn't for any of us. We're all too old, sad but true. The metaverse generation is really, really young, but if anybody in this room has children, you'll know what I'm talking about. You cannot pull their iPad or their video game console out of their hands. They do all of their socializing with their friends online, and that is their preference. They don't even want to go outside and play. They want to play video games, they want to build in Roblox, they want to watch other people play video games on YouTube and on Twitch. And all of this sounds like completely mystifying for us. Why would anybody watch somebody else play a video game? Well, think about it. What's a game show? Your parents watched Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune and Price is Right. They weren't playing. They watched other people play games. So we can dismiss it and say this is a sham and the metaverse isn't real and it's not going to happen, but that's because it's not for you. Just like your great-grandparents couldn't understand why anybody would watch game shows on television. It's happening. It's here. There's a lot of money being made in it today, and if you take the time to focus on what it might mean for your business, there's probably a really big opportunity for you. Next slide. So this is what I'm talking about. If you look at how people spend leisure time, think about what you do when you're supposed to be doing something else. What do? You play on your phone, right? You play on your phone, you surf social media, you read a couple of articles on the internet. Our generation, I'm going to presume most of us in this room are millennial, maybe some boomers, some Gen Z like me. We spend a lot of time online, maybe not as much time gaming as our kids do, but there's probably some Candy Crush addicts in this room, Clash of Clans, games like that, more casual mobile games. But younger people are playing more and more games that are all about role-playing, and they're much more immersive. And that's a trend you can see in this chart. As people get younger, as the generations get younger, there's more and more time being spent in social video games, to the detriment of social media. Does anybody here know what the average age of a network television watcher is? Like, what's the average age of somebody who watches scheduled TV? Anybody have a guess? It's like 55. That's the average age. It's kind of like Major League Baseball. The average age of Major League Baseball fans is in the 50s. Culture's shifting. Where people find culture, what people do in their spare time is completely changing. And so all of the big media companies, social media companies like Facebook, Google, Microsoft, they're trying to figure out where do you find young people, and they are in video games. Next slide. So what is the metaverse? The metaverse is social media, video gaming, e-commerce, meaning buying things, and chat, all inside one technology experience. Next slide. What's cool about the metaverse is it's really just getting started. It's not a new idea. There have been metaverses for 15, 20 years. InView, Second Life, some might even say The Sims, which is a game some of us may have played when we were younger, are all examples of metaverses. Just because it's been around for a while doesn't mean that it's not coming soon. And I like to use the analogy from my past. I come from the boutique hotel industry. In the late 90s and early 2000s, boutique hotels were the it thing. Does anybody here remember the Delano Hotel in Miami? How hot was that place, right? Remember when the Morgan's Hotel opened? It was like the first hotel ever that had like a really hip bar on the ground floor. And it seemed like, oh my gosh, I've never seen this before. But guess what? Paris has had boutique hotels since the 1700s. This was not a new idea to have small, chic hotels. What was new was the institutionalization of it. This idea that you could replicate it, that you could roll it out in lots of places, and that other people could take the same business model and do it over and over again to the point where that was what people wanted. It was about mainstream adoption of boutique hotels, and that's what we're talking about happening in Metaverse here. So you have legacy worlds, but you have a lot of new entrants into the Metaverse space that are happening over the next 1, 3, 5 years. And that's when it's really going to start getting interesting. If anybody's seen the movie Ready Player One, that's really the visual style that got everybody thinking about what would happen if we all stopped engaging in real life and spent most of our time in virtual worlds. And those immersive photoreal visual worlds are the ones that are going to start launching in the next 1 to 3 years. They're very much in the works today. Next slide. So what is Everyrealm, the company that I built? We're in the middle of the entire metaverse. We've invested in over 30 metaverse companies. We're one of the largest owners of metaverse real estate today. We're also one of the most active developers of metaverse real estate. What is metaverse real estate? It's the content inside video games. And I'm going to show you some examples of exactly what that means. Next slide. So the biggest misconception about metaverse is that it's in VR. That in order to access the metaverse, you're going to have to strap your phone to your face and check out of life and make yourself physically vulnerable because you can't see what you're going or who comes into the room. Almost none of the platforms being built around metaverse, aside from Facebook's, are actually being built in VR. So why do we think that this is where it's going? 2 reasons. Number one, the movie Ready Player One uses a VR headset, but it's a movie. It's not real. And the second is because every journalist who writes about metaverse pulls the same stock photo and uses it at the top of the article because they're lazy. And so as a result, everybody thinks that metaverse is being built in VR. That's a complete misconception. The number of people in the world that have VR headsets is tiny. The way that metaverse becomes mainstream is on desktop. And again, anybody who has children knows kids are not spending most of their time in VR, even the ones that have an Oculus, which is a lot of American kids. They spend time on a console, on a PC, on a laptop, on a phone, or on an iPad. It's something you do 18 inches from your face, not 2 inches from your face. Next slide. So what is this? Does anybody know? Has anybody seen this before? The sandbox. So here we have a metaverse fan in the middle. Young, I can tell. This is the land map for a metaverse called the sandbox. So each of these squares represents one parcel of metaverse real estate, which sells for anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 each. It was more before the crypto crash, a little less now. And what the sandbox has done that's brilliant is post this map and let companies, as they buy parcels, put their logo on the map. That big purple R is my logo. And that's not the entire map, but you can zoom out and see more parcels. But it's almost like watching people RSVP to a party, right? As you see these logos pop, you're like, oh, Atari and The Walking Dead and Warner Music. And you can start to see how this is going to become a really interesting place to spend time because the brands are committing not only to buying that land, which they've already done, but then building things on it. That's metaverse real estate. That's what metaverse real estate is. It's owning these parcels of land inside video game environments where you can then build whatever you want on top of that land. Next slide. So this is an example of a project that we built at Everyrealm. It's called Metajuku. We built it last summer, and it's a shopping mall inside the metaverse. We designed it to look like the Harajuku district of Tokyo, which is this anime aficionado Japanese-style streetwear district. We wanted it to be really playful and colorful because that's what you go to video games for. And we actually leased the spaces in the mall to different tenants. So DressX, which is the one on the loop, is a virtual clothing store where you can buy clothes that you can wear virtually, meaning you can dress your avatar in a game, or you can Photoshop them onto yourself when you take like an Instagram photo. They're not real. You can never touch these clothes, but you can be seen wearing them, which, as we all know, is sometimes even more important than the reality. We want to show our friends what we've done. We don't even worry about if we're having fun while we do it, as long as we make sure that everybody sees the picture of us doing it. So Metajuku has tenants today that include JPMorgan Chase. We're about to reveal another big tenant that's a Middle Eastern conglomerate. It has a few digital clothing companies. And the reason this is important isn't because nobody's making a ton of money selling digital assets here, but it demonstrates the potential for the metaverse. What happens when people go to find products and shop for things with their friends? That's what makes it different, right? We can already buy things online, but you can't do it with your friends. You can go with your friends to a mall in the metaverse and buy things. Next slide. So this is another project we built. This we actually built in the sandbox, and it's a project called Fantasy Islands. We developed 100 private islands in the metaverse on land that we owned, and we sold them last summer for $15,000 each. We paid about $500 each for the land. We hired a designer to design the islands. We hired video game developers that now work for us to build the islands themselves. Those islands have traded for as much as $250,000 each, which is almost as much as you'd pay for a real house in the real world. Next slide. Here's some more renderings of what those fantasy islands look like. So we sold 100 of them. Today, I believe the lowest price is $90,000, and there's one that's actually listed for $1 million. There are different rarities of them. People buy them, real people with real money, because they're scarce, because they're cool, and because they can. Next slide. This is a side rendering of that same development that you saw on the previous slide. So at Everyrealm, we're metaverse real estate developers. We buy the land, we conceive of the project, we hire architects, we use our video game development team to actually build and program the assets so that, why is it a video game? Why isn't it just a rendering? What's the difference between a rendering and a video game? A rendering, you can see it. A video game, if you turn the doorknob, the door opens in the virtual environment. That's the distinction. And so you have to program it like a video game, like Super Mario Brothers or Call of Duty. And that's what makes metaverse real estate development more complicated than just doing a 3D rendering in Blender, which you guys are all probably familiar with coming from the traditional real estate industry. Next slide. This is another of the fantasy islands. This one was inspired by the south of France. Pretty cool. If any of you want to drop a couple $100,000, you can have your own private island that looks just like that too. Next slide. So that concludes my presentation. I hope that you found this interesting and perhaps thought-provoking as you talk about more traditional real estate technology later today. Thank you for your time.